Meghan feeling frustrated and Harry in the firing line. That is exactly what the Heat magazine article said, and there's a few contradictions in it, which I'm going to go over in this video. I've also given my personal views on it over on Black Belt Secrets, linked in the description below, where you get to hear my personal views and opinions, which I don't normally share on this channel. On this channel, I usually share with you what the law says, how it might be interpreted, how it might be analysed, and whether there are any contradictions that we as lawyers would usually pick up and use if this were going to court. Not that this is going to court, it's not, but this is just an idea of what we might look at if that be the case. So we'll link this article in the description below, and it says, "Desperate Meghan, I need to fix this." It talks about supposedly a source talking to Heat magazine and telling them that Meghan is essentially frustrated with herself, that she didn't more forcefully tell Harry not to include certain things in his memoirs and his book Spare. But here's the slight contradiction. The article quotes the source as saying that it's not as simple for Meghan to just distance herself from this situation because she's got to be seen to support Harry. But at the same time, it goes on to say a few extra things which I think is contradictory, and therefore leads me to believe that this source is either Meghan herself or at least somebody that is close to her and has been told or asked to talk to Heat magazine to put this narrative out there, essentially being that it's not her fault, which means Harry's in the firing line. Let me explain. So going down into this article here, it says that despite being a bestseller, critics branded his book Spare as disastrous, and then leading to a very difficult few months. They were obviously ridiculed in the South Park episode, with an exaggerating story following it about the near catastrophic car chase in New York, which most people think didn't really happen, and afterwards saying that they seem like they are falling apart. Now here's the interesting bit that comes here, where it says in this article that an insider told Heat that Meghan and Harry are both stunned by the harsh things that are being said and that the hits keep coming. But I think that's a little bit hypocritical in that they did an interview with Oprah Winfrey. Harry wrote this book Spare with intimate, grossly intimate details that really shouldn't have been in that book. And then the Netflix documentary series, which many people are just describing as a hit piece, described and disguised rather as a documentary. So it's a little bit hypocritical then to say, if this source is correct, in saying that they are stunned by the hits keep coming. The source goes on, apparently, and here's where we're going to come to the contradiction in a moment, which a lawyer's field day, if you will, if you come across a contradiction like this. Meghan's saying that they must never give up, but that doesn't take away the fact that she and Harry are currently perceived as a laughingstock, and all for their bravado. It's a humiliating reality, and that's truly sinking in. But the contradiction, really, is the bit about where it says in this article that Heat magazine were told by the source that Meghan can now see, now I'm quoting now, Meghan can now see that, whether it's fair or not, they are being viewed as professional whiners, and it's not as simple as distancing herself, because she has to be seen as fully supportive of Harry. So just pausing there, according to the source that's spoken to Heat magazine, Meghan sees that they are being seen as complaining all the time, but it is not simple enough to distance herself because she's got to be seen as supportive of Harry. Now there's a couple of things in there. First of all, not as simple as distancing herself suggests that that might be something that she might want to do. Secondly, because she has to be seen as supportive of Harry, suggests that she wants to be seen as being supportive, but may not actually be supportive. All according to this source, you understand, by Heat magazine. So not necessarily confirmed as coming directly from Harry or Meghan themselves. But if it's a source that is privy to this information, and if Heat magazine has checked this out, which I would have thought they would, that's the basis upon which I'm talking to this about, That seems a little bit odd, because to say that it's not as simple as distancing herself suggests that that's what she wants to do, because she has to be seen as being supportive of Harry, which suggests that that may not be what she wants to actually do, but to be seen to be as such. But then it gets worse, to say she's now regretting that she wasn't more hands-on or involved when he was putting the book together. So that is distancing, and it's a direct contradiction to the first part of that quoted source. First of all, saying that it's not as simple as distancing herself, and then a whole load of distancing language, such as that she's regretting not being more hands-on when he was putting the book together. This theory that she micromanaged, and this is where it really comes out. This is why I think it is a source planted to give a narrative. Why else would a source be coming out saying this in the first place? But nonetheless, she's now regretting, the source said to Heat magazine, that she wasn't more hands-on. This theory that she micromanaged what he wrote or had any say in the manuscript is totally wrong. It was Harry's book and she let him get on with it. Now that is distancing. So the first part of it said that it's not as simple as distancing herself, meaning she can't just distance herself from it. She can't step away and pretend that it's not her. And yet the second part of this quote is exactly that, making it sound like she was not the one involved. So she is distancing herself according to this source, not necessarily according to them, you understand. It was Harry's book, she let him get on with it. The same went for his interviews and promo tours. Again, distancing. That was evidenced by the fact that she let him do those by himself. Let him do them by himself? If it was his choice and it was all him, then it's his choice, he did it. It's not a case of letting him do it, but this language here is absolutely distancing her from him and what he did. Presumably, if this were coming directly from them or from what they've said or from people close to them or whatever, then presumably it's because they now see that that didn't go down too well. It may have got views, but that's not necessarily the same thing as having a good response. Quite the reverse sometimes. That was evidenced by the fact. Now, why would somebody need to evidence anything? Looking at the wording carefully from this source, that was evidenced by the fact. The only reason anyone would use that phrase is if they want you to believe it. If I'm in court and I want a judge or a jury to believe a thing, and I say, this happened, you can believe this happened because it is evidenced by the CCTV, a witness, documentary evidence, DNA, whatever. The only time you would ever say that this is evidenced by the fact that is when you're trying to convince somebody that something happened. A source is not going to be trying to convince anybody. A source, unless told to convince somebody, is just going to say what they think, what their information is. This is what I know, this is what I'm told, this is what I heard. But in this case, that was evidenced by the fact that she let him do those by himself. So that, to me, is someone trying to prove to you, to convince you that it was all Harry and nothing to do with her, despite the fact that the first bit of this said that it's not as simple as distancing herself. Now, it goes on. Finding a new platform to host their podcast is a priority for Meghan now. How would they know that unless they're genuinely involved? They're not giving up. They still feel passionate about making a success somehow in the long run, but they can't help but feeling like they're staring down the barrel of a potential nightmare with a massive challenge on their hands to find new ways of making a living in America. This reads very much like it's a first-person account that you're supposed to believe is the way that they think, albeit from a source, according to Heat magazine. Meghan doesn't think it's impossible. She's too self-assured and ambitious for that. But it's a mess that she could do without. And ultimately one she feels stems from Harry's decision to go after the family in the way that he did. Wow. According to this source, this is a hit piece against Harry, in the way that I read this. So, things that have been described as a hit piece such as the documentary by many of you in the comments and many others, commentators, and for this to say that it's not as simple as distancing herself and she has to be seen to be supportive of Harry, and yet they are both stunned, according to the source, at the harsh things said and that the hits keep coming. But this, ironically, to me, within what is this quoted source by Heat magazine, is an internal hit from her to him. That's just my take on it. You're welcome to disagree with it. This is how I would think about it as a lawyer if I were to take this information and use it and say, this has been reported, this is what it says, isn't it true that this is really what happened and this is really how things have gone down? That's what I think about it. Let me know what you think in the comments below, because this is a very interesting twist, a very ironic twist, a contradiction within a phrase in itself. And if it's coming from a source that Heat magazine claimed to have information on this, otherwise they wouldn't be using it, it very much seems to me like it's somebody trying to portray their perspective, their narrative, or her narrative. Perhaps it's just her narrative. This is something that could well be used to elicit the truth of the matter. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you like the video and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.